So let me ask you guys a question, since I didn't get to say hi to everybody. How many freshmen do we have in the audience? Freshmen, where are you guys? Raise your hands. Beautiful. Yeah, we got some house lights so I can see you. How many sophomores do we have in the audience? Sophomores, make some noise. You can do more. Woo! Okay, I know. We'll show a little pride. How about any juniors in the audience? I see. That was where you guys were. Okay, and how about any seniors, any class of 2012 members? How about my super seniors? Where are you guys? Come on, I'm one too. Woo! Super seniors. Yeah. I wouldn't leave you guys out. So, like Colin said, my name's Kristina. I'm the Senior Educator in Southern California for the Alliance for Climate Education. And what I get to do as an educator is I have the great privilege of going to high schools all over Southern California, giving this assembly about climate science and solutions. So by raise of hands, how many people here have seen the ACE Assembly before? I know we have some people in here, right? Beautiful. So you all sitting here are one of over 1.2 million people across the country that has seen the ACE Assembly just in the last 2.5 years. Now, let me ask you another question. How many people here are aware of this issue called climate change or global warming? Raise your hands, whether it's in the news or in your classrooms or at home. Beautiful. Now, no matter how much you know about it or not, you probably sense that this is a serious issue, right? And the last thing that you want is some lady showing up to your TEDx event talking about all the world's problems, right? We're talking about ideas we're spreading. And most importantly, we're talking about solutions in global leadership, in education. So what I'm going to do for you is I will break it down for you in a way that you probably haven't heard before, unless you've seen the assembly, right? So we're going to talk about science and a few of the consequences of climate change. But most importantly, we're going to talk about young people and the solutions that they're making happen on their campuses and in their communities all over the nation and right here in Southern California. So we're going to take a look at where the world is, see a little bit of this assembly, and see what we can do to change it. So let's get started. So here we go. So a while back, scientists discovered that the Earth had kind of this giant thermostat that controls the temperature of the planet. And these days, that thermostat is getting turned up, like way up. And see, it's all about greenhouse gases, right, fossil fuels. But when you really get down to it, it's about all of you and the choices that you make. Because in 2012, we've inherited a country all about living large, right? Not really. See, most of us are living large and don't even know it. And what I mean is that we each take up a ton of space, but that's not really easy to see because we just cover a little bit of ground with our own 2 feet, right? And then your room and your stuff cover some more, and then you count your home, and well, yeah, you take up some space, but then there's all that space you're using that you never even see, like in Iowa to grow the food you eat, or in Brazil and China where we get a lot of the materials to make all of our stuff. Or maybe in the Middle East, where we get the fuel we need to drive around. And then there's the space it takes all around the world to dump your stuff when it turns into garbage. Because everything that you buy and use and eventually toss out has got to go somewhere, and you take up that space too. So whether your family's living in some big old MTV Cribs mansion or a little apartment, whether you got lots of money or a little, makes no difference, because we're all in the US, in this country that's living really large. In fact, the average US teenager, like most of you here, uses about 21 football fields of Earth's resources to live. But you didn't choose to live that way, right? You were just born into this world, created by previous generations, so you kind of got stuck living large. And every day since you were that cute little baby, you know, advertisers on radio and television have been telling you that you could be cooler, right? By having more and more and more stuff, kind of making you want to live as large as you can. Now, whether you like it or not, you're using up 21 football fields, so what's that even like? Line them up end to end, and you would have to run for over a mile down your football fields before you were done. Then if we multiplied that by all the students here at the RFK community schools, we'd have to go from here to Colorado, just to cover the space that this one school campus uses. But there are thousands of schools in America, and colleges, and offices, and apartment buildings. I mean, there are over 300 million of us, each with our 21 football fields. And the Earth only has so many resources, but we in the US aren't the only ones using them up. Some countries are living almost as large as we are. It's true that in most places, people are living a lot smaller, but in most countries, the population is growing. And that means almost everyone is racing to live as large as they can, because they've been convinced that living well means living supersized, just like us. But if everyone in the world used 21 football fields, we need about 5 planet Earths. And as it is, we're using up more and more of the planet's resources while taking away what the Earth needs to clean and regenerate itself. We're grabbing habitat from thousands of species on the brink of extinction, and we're even crowding in on each other's need for space. But using all these resources is creating this more immediate and visible problem. See, what most of us don't see is that living so large is turning up the dial on that thermostat quickly towards way too hot. Because it takes a lot of energy to live so large, right? Move your stuff around, yourselves around, to heat and cool our homes and our buildings, and to produce electricity, we burn fuel. A lot of fuel. And you know what today's fuel choice is, right? Fossil fuels. Coal, oil, and natural gas, made from living things like plants and some animals that died and decomposed over millions of years. But now fossil fuels have been pretty important, right? They powered the Industrial Revolution, and that led to countless innovations that really improved our quality of life. But over the years, we've come to find out they've got their downsides, because people are doing crazy stuff to get them, like blowing up mountaintops, polluting waterways, and sometimes even fighting each other to get them. And another problem is that they'll eventually run out. But the biggest problem is that when we burn fossil fuels in our cars and trucks to produce electricity and make all of that stuff, we're turning up the dial on that planetary thermostat in a major way. So how come? Well, now we gotta understand how that giant thermostat works, right? So in simple terms, you can turn it up or down by changing the balance of gases in the air around us, in our atmosphere. And less than 1% of our atmosphere is made of greenhouse gases, these special gases that keep the planet warm. So as the Earth gets warmed by the sun and puts off heat, these gases trap heat, holding it near the surface when it otherwise would have escaped into space. So we've actually got to love greenhouse gases, because without them, LA would be ice cold all the time. But when we have just the right mix of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, the Earth's temperature stays just right for life as we know it. And just right means that ice caps stay frozen, keeping sea levels from rising and preserving homes for polar bears. It means our oceans currents continue to flow the way they have for thousands of years. Just right means that salmon can live in their cold water homes. It means gorillas can live in their warm, misty forests. It means Italians can grow olives, Americans can grow corn, Brazilians can grow coffee. Because just right means that the seasons that we've come to count on come every year, just as they have throughout human history. And just right means that climate stays stable enough so that plants, animals, and people can continue to live where we live and do what we do, because it's something we've all come to count on with our lives. Make a sudden change in climate, plants, animals, even entire civilizations can get driven to extinction. But I'll leave you with one last thing, the most important greenhouse gas for controlling that giant thermostat. You guessed it, right? CO2. Ta-da! Or carbon dioxide. So, moving on, now you know the basics of why climate change is real and human caused. Now, let's take a look at where we are today. So this graph shows the percentage of people nationwide who believe that climate change is real and happening, as compared to the number of publishing scientists around the world who know that climate change is real and human caused. Now, let me ask you I'm going to take a little audience poll right now. How about that? So raise your hand if you think that we need to restructure or reboost public education. Raise it up high so I can see you. If you think we need an improvement to public education, beautiful. Now keep your hand raised if you think that we need to take a more innovative approach to science education. Nice. And now I have an easy one for you. Raise your hand high if you think that youth are important. Beautiful, right? That's why we're here. So with this kind of climate that we have, and the challenges that we're facing in our communities, in our nation, in our state of California, the question is, how do we take an innovative approach to science education that addresses a huge, important global issue called climate change on a local level to millions of high school students? Right? That's a big question. So that is what ACE is seeking to do with our programs. So who is ACE, really, and what do we do? Well, let's check it out. So ACE is comprised of about 20 educators, just like myself, except completely different, spread all across the country, who give the assembly, part of which that you just saw, in 14 different regions and about 23 states nationwide. So if we can move ahead, here we are, spread out across the US. Now founded in Oakland, California in 2008, we're now in New York, New England, DC, North Carolina, Atlanta, Kansas City, Texas, Chicago, Wisconsin, Las Vegas, Southern California, Northern California, and the Sierras. Whew, it's a lot, right? Well, here we are doing our work, just like I was here a few months ago, right? So we give the ACE assembly to high school students that's vetted by our advisory board of IPCC scientists. That's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that big panel that produces a report about the state of global warming around the world every several years. Now, we're not just delivering the science and the consequences of climate change. And if you haven't taken a look around yet, remind yourselves, we're sitting in the room where this has happened, right? That was me just a few months ago at ASGL, presenting to Now Academy, and we've also presented to Visa too. But the way that we do that, to address the science, the consequences, and solutions to climate change, is by using animation and music and video and a live presenter, just like me, to deliver this message in a way to students that educates them, engages them, and then activates them and inspires them to take action, right? Because it doesn't stop with knowledge. So what we have is our Student Action Program. Now, ACE provides assistance to environmental clubs at schools where we present because students are inspired after the assembly and they want to know how they can do more. So we help lead them in climate and carbon cutting projects and waste cutting projects on campus that give them the skills they need to take out into their communities, but starting right on their school campuses. Now, one can't exist without the other. So the ACE Assembly and the Student Action Program, they support each other. Now, moving on, we also provide leadership trainings held 3 times a semester, which connect students from all over our region. So here in Southern California, we have probably the biggest region that ACE has. We cover everywhere from Santa Barbara and Ventura County all the way down to Orange County, out to San Bernardino, Riverside, of course in LA, and sometimes even in the desert. Right, so that's a big region, but we've had students from all over come specifically to our leadership trainings to get the project-based, skills-based learning that they need to complete these projects on their campuses. In addition, sometimes we have leadership trainings across regions simultaneously, so that, you know, if you've been to one of them, you might know that one of our climate battle raps can get really tough. Seriously, it gets really serious on Skype sometimes. Climate battle raps, you ain't seen nothing yet. But we can get into more of that later. So anyways, our student leadership trainings are designed to help students gain the skills they need to do projects on campus, but also to take those skills out into the workforce, right? So group learning, project building, problem solving, all of these things are addressed in our leadership trainings. And in addition, we want students to take that further. So sometimes we'll connect them to other organizational groups like 350.org, for instance. And if you didn't know, today, May 5th, is one of their International Days of Climate Action. They're looking to connect the dots all over the globe through coordinated climate actions, and that's happening right now as we speak. So with our network, with the 1.2 million students that have seen the assembly, with the tens of thousands of students on our action teams, we're making major progress all across the US. So take, for example, the students at Franklin High in Highland Park. Now, these students competed in our energy reduction competition just last semester, and in 4 weeks, by motivating teachers to turn off lights and unplug electronics, they actually saved over $1,000 in energy costs for their school in just 4 weeks, and they reduced over 12,000 pounds of CO2 emissions on campus. Now that they're taking that year-round, imagine what kind of results that they're pulling in, right? And another school further south in Torrance, West High, has been holding community e-waste drives. Now, when ACE came to their school, their e-waste drives were pulling in about 50 pounds each time. That's pretty good. Now, with ACE's help, and by attending our leadership trainings, they turned that e-waste drive around, they invited the entire community, and in one day, their first e-waste drive pulled in over 26,000 pounds of electronics waste. Now, the one that they just did a couple months ago pulled in 33,000 pounds of electronics waste in one day. I mean, these are amazing stories, right? And they also got $2,000 for their club. Not too bad, right? By partnering with the local hauling company. Now, these are some ways we've been doing work here in Southern California, but we can go even bigger, nationwide even. So we're going to take a look at a couple of our students from Northern California who have been doing some major work through their community and across the US. So let's check this out. That should play.
We're here because we saw an amazing ACE presentation 2 years ago that inspired us to go on this crazy journey. We figured that if we can do it, you can do it.
We decided to take this to other local schools through our organization, Smart Power Ed.
I'm Manish.
I'm Daniela.
Hi, Daniela.
Hi, I'm Shreya.
Hey, Shreya, nice to see you.
It's so
Pretty sweet, right? So with students like these across the nation, the question really is, what's next? What's next for your generation? What's next for the youth who are leading this movement? Well, at ACE, what we're seeking to do is we're seeking to take our program, hopefully to all 50 states in the US, and we're hoping that by inspiring students, by educating, activating them, and inspiring them to take action, that the United States will become a leader in climate action. And the young people sitting in this room, the young people all over our state of California and nationwide, will set the precedent for climate action across the country and around the world. So, lastly, just wanted to say, I hope you're excited as we are to be a part of this movement. And thank you so much.